heaven. In truth, evil does not ultimately exist. Ultimately. In this world, it exists. In this world, there is pain. In this world, there is sin. But there is something behind it all. It's like a facade. And really, it's for the good. We're going to talk about that after text number 2. Who would like to read text number 2?
Sound advice has been offered by our sages on cleansing one's heart of all sadness and of any trace of worry about worldly matters, even children, health, or livelihood. The Talmud explains that one should accept misfortune as joy, just like the joy in the visible and obvious good. For this too is for the good, except that it is not apparent and visible to mortal eyes, for it stems from the hidden world, which is higher than the revealed world.
Okay, let's turn the slide. This is to illustrate the point. What did we just read? That there is good, and then there's good. There's hidden good, and there's revealed good. What would be an example of hidden good and revealed good? So this is a very simplistic one. Here on our slideshow. Bundle of cash or a wooden truck. Which is a better gift? Bundle of cash. Now let's say you were giving it to a child who's 2 years old. Okay? And a child has no idea what cash is or the value of cash. Okay? $20,000 CD, right? He just doesn't get it. But the truck, he'll go for it. Now, if it's one or the other, if those are the only options, a parent or the one giving the gift is going, if he truly wants to benefit this child, he'll give him the more valuable thing. Will the child appreciate it?
No.
No, he won't.
Not now.
Not now. Later on. So what's lacking is not the gift or the goodness or the intention of the giver. What's lacking here is the understanding, the ability to understand of the receiver, the recipient. Okay? Very simplistic example. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, we have 2 types of good. If you keep hitting it, I think you can.
Sure.
Everything in life has meaning and purpose. Okay? The animal soul is the part of us that wants the immediate gratification. It's the part of us that only sees one dimension to life. That dimension is this world, physical. And it says, hey, if I can't have it now, if I can't have it all, then I'm suffering. I need what I need now. What I want now, I should say. The godly soul is focused on another part of life. It realizes that life is not about the here and now. The physical is actually a very limited time and place. But we move on, right? The soul, it's not only does the soul move on after death, but even in this world, all the godly soul wants is to connect to God and to connect to a higher purpose. So the godly soul, if we focus on the godly soul's needs, we can connect, or we can rise above the immediate needs that we have. Let's take a look at the next slide. Quick story about this idea that eventually things come to be good. Famous story of Rabbi is he was traveling one time and he came to a town and he looked for lodging. No one in the town would put him up. So he was forced to sleep in the forest. And he had with him a donkey for traveling. He had a lamp to read Torah with at night. And he had a rooster to wake him up in the morning so he could daven. Yeah, those 3 things. I wonder how you snooze that one. So he got himself ready in the forest, and a wind came and blew out his candle. And he had nothing to light it with. So now he was stuck in the dark. He couldn't study. And Rabbi Akiva, that was his life and his joy. So instead of getting upset about it, he said, whatever God does is for the good. This too is from God. A short while later, he heard an animal come and eat his rooster. He said to himself, how am I going to daven? And so he said, whatever God does is for the good. And finally, he heard another animal attack his donkey. Oh my God. And he said, everything that God does is for the best. Okay? Now, the next morning, when he woke up, he went back to the village, and he saw that the village had been attacked in the middle of the night by bandits. And he realized that if his light was on during the night, they would have found him. If the animals had been making noise, they would have found him. So he saw, in retrospect, how everything was truly for the good. Okay. Now the Torah says that because this concept that things are eventually for the good, just like the child will eventually see the money is worth more than the truck. So to every event that takes place, we may not see it here, right now, but ultimately we will see it. Sometimes we're privileged to see it in this lifetime. Sometimes we only see it in the next one. The Torah says when Mashiach comes, we will actually thank God for all the things that we went through, because we will see how there's good. It was ultimately for the good. And not only ultimately for the good, but the event itself somehow was good. You see, Rabbi Akiva, the story of Rabbi Akiva illustrates the point that the outcome will be good. So all's good that ends well, right? Or all's well that ends well, right? But in fact, when the Mashiach comes, it will come to a higher level. We'll actually see that the suffering itself somehow was good. And this is something that's very difficult to understand. But an analogy that's used to express the idea is painting. You know, if you go up to a painting very closely and you see this yucky brown color, and that's all you fixate on, you know, you can't enjoy the painting. But as you move away, you see that brown was part of a bigger picture with beautiful colors, and somehow the brown brought out all the other colors. And if it wasn't for the brown, then the picture would be lacking something. So you realize that there is beauty here, despite the fact that you couldn't see it initially. So when Mashiach comes, we're actually going to see the beauty in every single suffering. But that's still very difficult for us to understand. You know, it may intellectually click, but in your heart it doesn't so easily. And there's a story I like to share, and I share it with Deborah. She likes the story too. There was once a rabbi who was very wealthy. He was a lumber merchant, and and one day news came to town that one of his ships had sunk in the ocean, and he lost a vast fortune on that ship. But even worse is that he lost very close family members on the ship as well. So the townspeople didn't know how to break it to their rabbi. You know, how do you tell somebody such terrible news? So they decided, you know what, we'll pick his prized pupil, his favorite disciple. We'll honor him with the privilege. So the disciple went to shul that day, went to the study hall. He opened up a tractate in Brachos, one of those Talmud, sections in Talmud, and it says there that one must make a blessing for the bad, just like one makes a blessing for the good. So he called the rabbi over. He says, "Rabbi, tell me, how is this possible? How are we supposed to bless God for bad events in our lives, just like for good events?" So the rabbi said, "Well, my son, don't you remember the story of Rabbi Akiva? Everything is eventually for the good, and so on and so forth, right?" So the student wasn't satisfied. He says, "Rabbi, I still don't get it. Rabbi Akiva is a very high level. I still don't understand how we are supposed to expect ourselves to bless God for the good, for the bad rather, just like for the good." So he said, "My son, it's sort of like a painting, and if you move away from it," right, he attended JLI, right? And so the student said, "Rabbi, I don't understand. I mean, what you're saying makes sense, but how could a person bring themselves to do such a thing? To bless God for the bad, just like for the good?" So then the rabbi said, "No, my son, you have to understand. It's all a challenge. It's no pain, no gain. If you hadn't gone through this, you'd never be where you are today. And that's how you have to look at every experience. And so you can bless God for the good, for the bad." So finally his student said, "You know, I'm not getting it. But are you telling me, Rabbi, that if you hear bad news, that you have to get up and dance, just like you would if you were at your only child's wedding, and bless God?" So the Rebbe said, "Yes, that's what the Gemara is saying." So he said, "Rebbe, please get ready to dance." So I have some history. They shared what happened. So the rabbi, when he heard the news, he fainted on the table. And when he came to, he said, "Suddenly I don't understand the Gemara." And the message in the story is that although intellectually we are given tools, the Torah says, yes, you can look at it from this perspective and that perspective, but in order for it to actually change our feelings, it's not easy, and it takes a lot of work. It takes effort. So hence it says until